are listening to a free version of Majority Report with Sam Steeder. To support the show and get another 15 minutes of daily program, go to majority.fm, please.
The Majority Report with Sam Steeder.
It is Friday, January 11th, 2019. My name is Sam Steeder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, the proprietor and host of the Benjamin Dixon Show, Ben Dixon. Also on the program today, the proprietor of the Langdon Boom eBay page, Matthew Film Guy, will be joining us. Meanwhile, Trump's looking to take billions away from disaster area relief to deal with the crisis at the border and build the wall. And the shutdown is getting more severe. $0 checks being sent to furloughed workers, airport terminals closing, Mitch McConnell actively blocking a vote to end the shutdown. Maybe someone will notice that he is the linchpin to all of this. Somebody just found out that Steve King is a racist. And progressives score a B on their plan to get key committee spots. Michael Cohen to testify to the Democratic-led House committee. And congratulations. Oceans have been heating up faster than the scientists realized. All this and more on today's program, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, it is Friday. Not the craziest of news weeks in the Trump era, that's for sure. But of course, that is because the government has shut down, and Donald Trump seems to have shut down. Of course, Mike Pompeo was in Cairo. Was it yesterday or 2 days ago? Having delivered what some people call the single worst foreign policy speech by a senior representative of the U.S. government in the history of the U.S. government, which is, it's always important to be a superlative. And so if that's the way you have to get it, it's unfortunate. But, I mean, as long as you get there, it's nice to be the most of something. We will talk a little bit about that. Also, I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about this with Ben. The sort of, I mean, the almost. It was so inevitable that we would see the Politico piece talking about how people are frustrated with AOC in the Congress. I would anticipate more of these, and I think it's a good sign. Matt Stoller, too, if you have the opportunity to check out his Twitter feed, has a great thread on it, and it's not even ideological. In some respects, it is. I contend a lot of it is just the Democratic Party. Much of its leadership has ossified, and am I saying that right? Just sounds like a weird word as it comes out of my mouth. Has ossified, the analog I would give, or maybe we should just wait for Ben, but the analog that I would give would be the reporting that we saw from, on one hand, The Intercept, but also I think it was Putnam and Scopel. Scopel. And about what was happening in these districts where Democrats were organizing. And regardless of ideology, the DCCC was coming in and sort of bigfooting in ways that were not strategic or tactical, just stupid. And this is what you get when you have sort of legacy and very static organizations in some way. And I think ideology is one thing. But I think what they're really more concerned about with AOC is that she is not following the sort of very, the niceties and the rules. And she is sort of going around the soft institutional apparatus. And I think that's what we're seeing more than anyone's, broad concerns that she's going to pull the party too far to the left.
It's both.
Well, it might be. But I think it's coming from people who I think have similar politics in some respects.
No.
At least not. Well, did you read the piece?
Nope.
Okay. Anyways, best to read the piece that I'm referencing before you characterize it, I think. But
speaking in the general sense.
Right. But I'm speaking specifically about this piece and these criticisms. And so I think there's no doubt there are members of the Democratic Party who are, don't want the party to move to the left and are concerned about her celebrity, defining them in a more conservative district or whatnot. But the issue here is really more about a sclerotic institution that does not like this type of energy. So there's going to be more of this. But I don't know that there's much that they can do about it, except for, obviously, in some respects, make it hard for her to achieve certain things in the House. But I have a feeling her agenda in terms of achievement is slightly different. So we shall see. But meanwhile, the attacks from the right on AOC are pretty much garden variety. This is where they pretend that they're ideological when it's about business. And by that, I mean, here is a guy, Justin Haskins, from the Heartland Institute, on with Steve Doocy on Fox and Friends. Now, if you don't remember the Heartland Institute, they came up because there was a treasure trove of documents that were leaked in 2012 that spoke to their strategy to fight any response to climate change. This was an organization that received at least almost $750,000 from Exxon before they started to before in the late 90s, they stopped disclosing their donors. And they also, oddly enough, were also involved in helping smoking. So I should say tobacco. At one point, the former Heartland president wrote in an op-ed that moderate smoking does not raise lung cancer risks. And there were few, if any, adverse health effects associated with smoking.
Just got to be moderate.
Just got to be moderate.
Stop politicizing the science.
Stop politicizing it.
I got news for you.
Think clearly.
As someone who was an adult in 1998, it was quite clear that cigarette smoking was dangerous. This is not, we're not talking like the late 18th century
Gotta
or
get all the
19th
facts.
century. Yeah, exactly.
If you smoke a cigarette before the full moon outside of the distance of a woman on her period, it's actually good for your blood pressure. Science. from the heartland.
Anyways, this Heartland Institute is literally a who's who of right-wing billionaires and millionaires, and also just like the oil and gas industry, the leadership PACs. I mean, it goes on and on and on. But here is Justin. Is that his name? Justin Haskins on the Green New Deal.
Good morning. It's great to be with you.
It's great to have you. You know, when you hear Green New Deal, you think, okay, this is just about the environment, right? But when you look at some of the main points, and then we'll ask you to...
One of the giveaways as to why it's not just about the environment would be the New Deal part. In fact, that's not. I mean,
it's sort of baked in the cake, I think you would say.
Yeah, Green New Deal. In fact, of those three words, two of them would imply that it has more to do with the New Deal than environment. But let's not get picky.
When you look at some of the main points, and then we'll ask you to comment on it, it does call for the elimination of the use of fossil fuels within a dozen years. It calls for universal health care. It calls for federal jobs guarantees, and it calls for a basic income program across the country. That is not just about the environment. That's pretty much about everything.
Yeah, that's right. This is actually not about green energy. It would be impossible to switch the entire electricity generation system in the United States over to renewable energy in just 12 years. And I think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders and people like that know that. This is really about socialism. This is nothing more than a socialist Trojan horse. That's why they've inserted all sorts of programs into the Green New Deal that have nothing to do with green energy.
Right. Exactly. You know, and when you look at those things, and I've been...
Pause it again. The package is not called the Green Energy Program. It's called the Green New Deal. New Deal. Things like Social Security came out of the New Deal.
And I've been to Bernie Sanders rallies where, you know, the audience there, they love to hear what he's saying, because he said, look, you have been kept down by Washington. I'm going to open up possibilities that have never been possible before. The problem is, when you realistically look at the price, it's like, wow, can we afford that?
Yeah, well, we absolutely cannot afford it. I mean, we're talking about tens of trillions of dollars. Just the single-payer healthcare part of this alone, the Mercatus Center estimates would cost $32 trillion in the first 10 years. And even if we were to double all taxes, including individual and corporate rates, we would not be able to pay for just that one part of it.
Pause it. So one of the things I really enjoy about that talking point right there is that, as you recall, the Mercatus Foundation did say that the cost of single-payer healthcare would be $32 trillion. They also said in the same report that the cost of not doing single-payer healthcare and just continuing on with what we have now will cost $35 to $36 trillion. And on top of that, it also, that talking point has the added bonus of saying we could tax everybody 5 times over and not raise that. Well, the point is the vast majority of that money is already being raised insofar as we're taxing people at this rate. That's how, or it's being paid out. That money's going to get spent in some fashion. And based upon what the U.S. government pays now for health care, you don't need to raise a new $32 trillion out of the massive expense that we spend on health care. You need to raise probably less than half of that. But, you know, he's not going to explain that part.
I always want to know who we means when they talk about how we can't afford it. Right? Because he's clearly not talking about an aging senior who can't afford their diabetes medication, or a struggling single mom, right? Who already can't afford health care.
I think what they're thinking is taxpayers.
Taxpayers can't afford it.
That's a dog whistle.
Yes. Oh, indeed.
And corporate rates. We would not be able to pay for just that one part of it.
Why do you think, Justin, so many of these prominent Democrats are moving so far to the left? Is it because Bernie Sanders had such a good run last time?
Yeah, I think that that's a big part of it. I certainly think it helps. But I think that the party is moving to the left. I don't think this is just political posturing. I actually think that the Democratic Party is becoming the socialist party of America, that it's slowly occurring, and that if we don't do something to stop these individuals, we're going to wake up in 20 years and we're going to find ourselves in a radically different America, an America that looks more like the Soviet Union and less like the United States.
That's right. Starting with throwing you in a quarry somewhere, dude.
There you
Good
go.
luck.
Like, yeah.
Not going to be able to wear those.
Tap some maple.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Arresting everybody with glasses would be pretty close, but I would need to get LASIK surgery.
Yeah, don't worry. We'll give you a little bit of time. I'm not opposed to that.
I mean, they're not trying to create socialism. I believe Bernie and AOC are sincere social democrats, but certainly some socialist organizations, I'm not going to say who, support them as part of a wider, more long-term project to transition to socialism.
Oh, look at that! Where did we get that list of donors to the Heartland Fund? One is the one is the Donors Capital Fund. I don't know where that's from, but
sounds august.
Oh, okay, that's the one. That's like the super friends of all the right wing slush funds.
That's where the Koch brothers did their first Trading Places bet.
Exactly, and the Mercer Family Foundation has given almost $6 million. Dunn's Foundation for the Advancement of Right Thinking, $1.3 million. The Lyndon Harry Bradley Foundation, 1.2. The there's an Exxon comes in with like 530
taxpayers.
Yeah, there you go. So
lots of taxpayers.
As
all right,
we were saying,
folks. Just a reminder. You can support this program by going to jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you not only support the free show, you get the full show without commercials, and you get extra content every single day. That is during the week. 99.7% of the time. I just made up that number. There's been a day or two, I think. We are now on episode something like 2002 or something like that.
I think it's 2004.
2004. So check it out. Also, we're going to see a bunch of people at the live show this weekend. And we had a listener who sent us 2 tickets. This is listener Morgan. I have 2 tickets for the event at Bell House this Sunday. I sadly will not be able to use. It's a shame for them to go to waste. I'm hoping you guys can find someone to take them. So send us an email that says 2 free tickets in the subject line at majorityreporters@gmail.com. 2 free tickets, and we'll hook you up. All right, quick break, then Ben Dixon. We are back. Sam Cedar on the Majority Report on the phone. It is a pleasure to welcome back to the program the proprietor of the Benjamin Dixon Show and the co-founder of rebuilding the North Star, or I guess that's the website, right? But it's the rebuilt North Star. Ben Dixon. Ben, welcome to the show.
Sam, thanks so much for having me, man. It's always a pleasure.
When is what's the plan to launch the North Star?
Excuse me. So actually, Sam, we just acquired the northstar.com.
Oh.
It took a lot of doing, a lot of negotiations, and some money to get it. But we got the northstar.com, so everyone can go there. And we are launching February 14th, which is coincides with the culmination of the bicentennial celebration of Frederick Douglass's birth. So that is our official launch date, February 14th. We're going to have some articles out from some of the top thinkers of our time. They've agreed to come on and do some pieces for us. And our first video show will be out that day, as well as some podcasts. So all roads lead to February 14th.
Wow, that's great. Congratulations. I'm very excited
Thank you,
about
Ben.
it.
Thank you.
All right, so let's just start with where we are on the shutdown. The latest is that Donald Trump, and it's unclear where this is coming from. It's 3 U.S. officials familiar with the briefing that Donald Trump would use the Army Corps of Engineers and a portion of the $14 billion worth of Army Corps funding to build 315 miles of wall, slats, barriers, whatever it is. And this money was set aside to fund projects all over the country, including fix parts of storm damage Puerto Rico, fix parts of storm damage Texas and California. I mean, this is, I think, Arizona. So he's basically threatening, and I imagine it was military officials who leaked this, right? Like, I don't think it's coming from the White House because you wouldn't want this to get out there. Can you sense any type of even strategy here?
Yeah, no, the strategy is really clear. Donald Trump will do literally anything he has to pacify his base. Now, is that a coherent strategy? No, but that's clearly what he's doing. He's pushing this all the way through. He has a core support of people that they really don't care what precedent he has to break, what lawsuits that will ensue from him doing this, what nation or what groups will lose by him redistributing the funds in a different direction. They really don't care. All that matters is that this wall, in some form, right, is built. So that's the strategy. Now, whether it makes sense or not, that remains to be seen.
But it seems to me that had he gone on Tuesday night, right, and this must have been the plan from the beginning, and announced that that there was a state of emergency, right, and had then, at that point, then sort of announced it. There wouldn't be the time that people have now to sort of like build a political argument against it, right? Like, he's only playing to his base. But now he's giving like time for all the non-base opposition to really harden, and even on his logic, it doesn't seem to make sense.
Right, unless he's doing what a lot of presidents do, more rationally speaking, which is to float this trial balloon, right? And to see what actually comes of it, what is the real reaction, and how much will he lose in the end. But he gets a win-win out of this no matter what, right? So he's taken a hard line position, public facing, but perhaps this did get leaked from the White House because they know that if they go down this road, there's a long line of lawsuits that's going to ensue, as well as losing a lot of support from some key Republicans. So it really could be that Donald Trump is playing both sides of the aisle on this, trying to pacify his base while at the same time trying to distance himself from actually pulling the trigger on declaring a national emergency. Because like you said, if he was going to actually declare that emergency, it would have been Tuesday night in the Oval Office speech.
So how does this resolve? Because, we have Mitch McConnell, who I've got a list here of, it's fascinating, of who's up for re-election in the Senate in 2020. And there's a lot of Republicans, all four of the Republicans who we have heard most of, right? Shelley Moore Capito in West Virginia. We've heard from Joni Ernst in Iowa. We've heard, obviously, from Collins in Maine. The only of Cory Gardner in Colorado, who could be in big trouble because of this. The only Republican we've heard from that is not up for re-election is Murkowski in Alaska, and they are afraid that they're going to lose because this is. I mean, we are right on the cusp of it becoming, severe. Right. I mean, at one point we are now just at the point where they're not getting paid. We're seeing now in Miami, they're shutting down a terminal for a couple of days because TSA people are starting to leave. We're starting to see stuff like loans, to farmers not go through. It is like right now we're on the precipice, I think, of falling off, a cliff that is going to be very painful. Particularly, these senators are going to start feeling the pressure. At the same time, you have this opposite force on Mitch McConnell, which is if he allows a vote and undercuts Donald Trump, Trump attacks him, then Mark Levin and Sean Hannity, and they all attack him in the way that he was attacked in 2016. I think he's afraid of getting primaried. So it's cutting both ways, the 2020 election.
Right. But still, in the calculus that Donald Trump is operating through and by is really what's best for him. Right. So clearly he's not going to be concerned with Mitch McConnell in the grand scheme of things. So if you're trying to get an understanding of what Donald Trump is actually doing here, obviously the best way to figure it out is what's going to make him look best, what's going to make him his 2020 election more likely. And, he's counting on his base, the Mark Levin, the Sean Hannitys of the radio world, the Rush Limbaughs of the radio world. And really, I accidentally listened to a whole lot of AM Rush Limbaugh this week and Sean Hannity, and the callers that call in. Of course, this is anecdotal, but I wonder what percentage of people actually believe this. There were federal workers calling in saying that they were more than happy to suffer through this to secure our border. And of course, it's an anecdote, but I mean, with that kind of mindset out there, what does Donald Trump really have to lose by playing chicken? And I think that's what he's calculating. I think from his perspective, but at one point, right, the Senate has to give. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, of course they have to give, but I don't see the real losers in this, besides the people who are struggling, the agencies that aren't operating, the 80% of the food that has not been screened. Besides the American people in general, the other real losers in this is the Republican Party in general, starting with the Senate. So they are going to take it on the chin for Donald Trump. And the real question is, are they going to try to salvage anything from this, to try to salvage the Republican Party, which might actually mean a serious conversation about primarying Donald Trump himself. So it really is going to be a deciding moment here for the Republican Party. Are they going to continue to go down with Donald Trump? And that's a hard calculus when you consider he does control the base. The base is his. So I'm not really sure what Republicans in the Senate specifically, what they can do to come out on top.
Yeah, it's amazing as I look at this list. Like I feel like we're going to see, this is where we're going to see people who are going to start to freak out a little bit, right? It's I'm surprised that Capito on some level, but there must be some huge funding that goes on in West Virginia. But look at someone like Tom Tillis. Right, it's an R+3 in North Carolina. Yep. He's up for re-election. That's going to be scary for him. You got someone, obviously Susan Collins, who is, up for re-election. Iowa, Joni Ernst. I would say even David Perdue in Georgia, maybe, because that's supposedly an R+5 state, but that state moved quite a bit the past 2 years. And
the
in
midterms
2
were
years,
interesting here.
Yeah, very interesting, right? Like the percentage of African American vote went up by 1 or 2 points in terms of what making up the electorate, and that's not going to help David Perdue in 2 years. Cory Gardner is in big trouble. But then you see someone like Lindsey Graham. I think Lindsey Graham is also operating the same way that McConnell is. How do I stave off a primary challenge? Right? Like that's what they're worried about, some of those people. So all the so-called, well, I don't know that Mitch McConnell is a moderate, but, and Lindsey Graham has certainly changed. I mean, Lindsey Graham is afraid of getting primaried by a Trump Republican.
Yeah. Yeah, no. This is like the B side of the dance, right? This is the second act, if you would, of Donald Trump actually seizing full control over the Republican Party, and it really is just going to be reflective of who has an identity in the Republican Party. What is the Republican Party's identity outside of Donald Trump? And the problem is that a lot of the policies they never disagreed on. They just didn't like the way he presented himself. Well, now we have a policy that is clearly detrimental to them politically, whether they agree with them on the wall or not. It's now gotten to a point where it's detrimental to their political futures. And we have to see, like, where are they going to bargain? How are they going to play this out? You've already, like you said, Lindsey Graham, he's doubling down on Trump, but there's so many other Republicans that are going to be in trouble if this continues down this road. And so far, I actually have no idea. I have no inclination as to when Donald Trump will blink on this, if at all.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. The real question is going to be is does Mitch McConnell? And how do they open up on Mitch McConnell? I mean, I feel like Mitch McConnell is going to have to feign a heart attack, go into the hospital so that this can happen when he's like, I was in the hospital. I couldn't do anything about it. All right. Well, let's turn our attention to the other, I guess, it takes two to tango, as you know. And so part of the responsibility for the government closing.
You're obviously talking about the AP headline. Oh, my goodness. That had to be the very worst I've ever seen ever. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, yes, exactly. It's the Democrats. And I think, look, they're pushing for they're applying pressure in the Senate. I don't hear Mitch McConnell's name enough, frankly, but but that's that. Let's talk about first what's happening with the committee assignments. Just briefly, there was a story. At the beginning of this formation of this session of Congress. The CPC, the Progressive Caucus, had negotiated with Nancy Pelosi 40% representation and on 4 or 5 of the sort of really tier 1 committees, like Ways and Means and a couple others. And they have more or less gotten to 40%. However, some of those people who are members of the CPC are also members of the New Democratic Coalition. And, part of the problem is that the CPC has not quite organized itself in such a way that it is as meaningful to call yourself that, right? Like there's anybody can join. And so Pelosi just basically got away with what she could get away with, which is you wanted me to put CPC members on. I did. I can't. It's not up to me to police your caucus as to how legit they are. Now, the Financial Services Committee is looking like it could be a pretty good committee. It's a tier 2 committee, but it's an important committee. AOC is going to may end up on there, and a couple of maybe Katie Porter, a couple of very strong freshman Congress people. But what's your sense of how the progressives are doing here? And let's roll into this, the attacks on AOC in Politico. Yeah. Let's just put up that first tweet that she did. She responded the first one that I sent you. Yeah, here it is. She responded to someone tweeting out, AOC isn't the future of the Democratic Party. This is Joe Lieberman.
Yeah.
And she tweeted out, new party, who dis? We're going to talk more about AOC, about Joe Lieberman on Sunday. But but that, and then look what she put here in response to, I think, the Politico piece. Go back to that other one. Here it is. She wrote, to quote Alan Moore, "None of you understand. I'm not locked up in here with you. You're locked up here with me."
I loved it. Absolutely.
So just give me your take about what's going on here.
So, no, I think you nailed it, right? Nancy, I don't know who to blame or who to credit in the CPC assignments, because I think Nancy Pelosi did exactly what I would have done if I was in her position. If I have I cannot control the fact that your caucus is not as progressive as it needs to be. But if that's the measure that you want to use, then fine. Bring them on in and we could fill in those positions. That makes total sense. And I think it is more of a reflection on how unorganized progressives were prior to this moment, which is why I'm glad you tied AOC in this, because there really is the need for a much more organized representation in the Congress. Right. We've been progressive in the streets. Now we need to be progressive on the Hill. And not just progressives in name only. I hate to steal that from Republicans, but, we really do need people who aren't just signed up with the committee, but also actually hold progressive positions. Now, this is the problem with Democrats across the board that everyone has talked about for years, the fact that we don't really have true progressivism represented in the party. And this is why everyone is so upset or so befuddled with AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, because she's coming in talking about a top marginal rate of 70%. That's as progressive as we've heard in my lifetime. I've never heard anyone go in there just off the rip and say, no, this is what we should consider her Green New Deal. So that type of boldness and brashness is the only thing that's going to draw out the progressives. If there's any progressives amongst us, what AOC is doing is going to draw them out. And if they're not there, then we need to really honestly talk about doing some more primary, because, there are no locked positions. There are no locked seats. The seats belong to the people. And if the people demand more progressives, then I think Ocasio-Cortez's storyline and the way she did it and now how bold she is really going to inspire more progressives to be there in the first place, so that Speaker Pelosi doesn't have that easy hand to play of assigning progressives when in reality they're just third-way Democrats with the label of progressive.
I am of the mind that we should be actively looking for Democrats to primary, and we should expend those resources wisely. And it should be in places where you have there should be no Democratic seat that is a D plus 10 where someone doesn't have a 100% progressive voting record, in my estimation.
Right. Exactly.
And that's the type of thing. The real question is like, from a tactical standpoint, how much should AOC be saying this, right? Because they and when, because the problem is that they're afraid of her costing them some of their jobs. That's that's basically what it comes down to, right?
Well, then they need to put up or shut up, right? So if they're there and they have the opportunity to be more progressive, and Ocasio-Cortez, the answer to your question is she needs to do it now. Then, right? Let's do it now, because it may cause more waves than she wants to cause at this point. But we need to flesh this out. If you want to keep your seat, and the real blue wave is a progressive wave, then you need to become progressive. Have a change of heart. Have a coming to Jesus moment. Have a come to Ocasio-Cortez moment where you change your ways and you actually operate and vote based on progressive politics. Otherwise, then, you don't have a safe seat and not be progressive. I'm sorry.
And to what extent do you think that she can be essentially punished within the No, I mean, like, the thing is that she has a fairly safe seat. Right. Certainly as a Democrat. And in terms of primarying, it seems to me she has the ability to at least keep pace with the most well-funded possible primary challenger she could get, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Like, she has an ability to raise money, it seems to me, at this point, that is unrivaled by the vast...
Anyone.
And at least in the House. And and so she's there, she's safe. She doesn't have to worry about that as much. And she's basically, it seems to me, taking the political strength she has and using it, and that's necessarily going to step on other people's toes. And that to me seems to be like the first order issue in terms of what the dynamic is. I mean, I think people are in some way threatened by her ideology, her positions, but I think it's more they're threatened by her power, and it's power. She's not,
she's not fully even wielding it yet. Right. She's doing
sort
a
of
great job.
There's like a little bit of Serpico situation here where everybody's like, if you don't take the money, nobody's going to trust you. And
exactly.
You can take the money and then just give it back to somebody, but you got to take the money so everybody trusts you. And I feel like it's more about that rather than, directly or politics. I think that's a second order at this juncture anyways.
Yeah.
Because it's just, she's not getting along to go along type of situation. I think that scares people.
Right. Well, I think it's almost, I agree with you, but I can see how it would be one and the same. Her politics is exactly what threatens their positions. Like, if they had her politics, they wouldn't be threatened, right? They would be glad to have a champion in Ocasio-Cortez. So sure, their jobs are threatened, and I'm loath to offer anyone advice because I know she's a brilliant woman and she does not need my little old advice from down here in Georgia. But I would say never, ever, don't bat an eye. Fight as hard as you possibly can, because they will destroy you, whether you're fighting for the right thing or whether you're not fighting for the right thing. Never. I mean, anyone extending their arms out to hug you and asking you to rein you in, right? Asking you to back down. They want to destroy you. I don't care how big of a smile they have on their face. I don't care what race they are. I don't care what gender they are. They want to destroy you. So you might as well destroy them first. It is a bloodbath, dog eat dog. And I think she knows that, which is why she came out swinging with 70% of a top tax marginal rate. So just keep going, sis, keep going.
Yeah, let's also I want to touch on that for a moment, because one of the things I thought was amazing when we talked a little bit about this week was watching Julian Castro, who I would be surprised if there is any type of record, video, audio, or written, of him ever acknowledging that the top tax rate was 90% in the 50s or 60s in his entire political history, but for this week when he was asked about AOC's comments. That to me is stunning. I mean, I feel like we're seeing what we saw with single payer in Bernie. We're seeing the same thing in terms of the taxation with AOC. It's just like they start talking about it and they force other people to talk about it, and then all of a sudden it doesn't sound so crazy.
Right. She's pushing the Overton window over, man. Like, this is critical in our discourse. So maybe one day we don't get back up to 70%, but we get up to 50% or whatever. It won't happen unless people just get out there and say what is true and what is obvious. But that is, shame on the Democrats who, these things. You're fully aware of the progressive positions that we've had in this country's history, and you understand that we're nothing like that now. So, shame on them. Like, I don't even want to go down the road of like, what are you actually there for? Because we all can have our own way of thinking about that. We all have our own guess. But the fact is like, do they need a leader? Obviously. Should they have to wait on someone to open up the door for these conversations? No, they should have been. Julian Castro should have been that guy, right? But he wasn't. So thank God for AOC.
And any thoughts about Elizabeth Warren and her jumping into the race?
Yeah, man. Honestly, I have a love-hate relationship with the idea of Elizabeth Warren being president. I think she missed her boat. I think 2016 was her year. I think Bernie. I don't think Bernie would have run if she jumped in with the run Liz run campaign. But I like her still. I like some of her politics, and generally a fan, and always have been, and probably will be. But I think she missed the boat.
Right, so what do you mean by that? Like the
you have your moment, man.
Right.
Everybody has their moment, and you got to seize that moment. Her moment was 2016. By God, like we wanted It was time for America to have a woman president, just by sheer numbers and demographics. Like we should have had one a long time ago. It was time for America to have a progressive candidate. It was time for us to have Elizabeth Warren, and that's not this year. This year we need something else. This year we need somebody who can get in the ring and like eviscerate Donald Trump and come out not looking like a pig. You know what I mean? You get in the slop, you generally come out looking like a pig. We need someone who's a talented fighter enough to get in the mud with him and still come out looking good. And she's not that person, man. Did you see what Trump did with her campaign slogan? 2020th?
Right.
So she's already, in my opinion, she's missed her boat. She's not up to the task of beating Donald Trump. But I absolutely do like her politics. I respect her as a person, as a senator. I love what she's done. And if she's the candidate, I will wear her T-shirt and go out there and support her to no end. But we're in the early stages where we can really make smart decisions. I don't know if this is her time anymore.
Who are you thinking? I didn't want to go down this road quite yet, but I'm just curious. All right, you don't tell me. We'll wait. We got plenty. We got plenty of time to talk about this.
Yeah.
But interesting take. I mean, I guess we'll see. I'm curious to find out how all this stuff plays when we see the campaign actually roll out.
Do you think that? I know you don't want to go down here. Do you feel she's up to the task of taking on Trump?
I mean, I don't have a sense yet. I mean, I really, I personally don't think that anybody should roll around in the mud with Trump. I am of the school of you should dismiss him very quickly and don't get into and just let him roll around in the mud. Because I don't think at the end of the day, the 1-20-20, thing is really going to have much resonance. I think it will on the right. They will hype it up, but I think the dynamic is not too dissimilar from this wall situation. Donald Trump may very well call for a state of an emergency. He will not. He will not build the wall. He will try and get the money appropriated, and it will immediately be tied up in the courts. Those court cases will last well beyond 2020.
Yeah. For sure.
They will. Those court cases will end when the next president comes in and says, "Yeah, we're not going to do that anymore." And so nothing's going to get built, but there will be 40 to 45% of the country, maybe closer to 40, who are going to be ecstatic that he did this. And the Republicans will still take the brunt of the shutdown. And we'll move on. And I have a feeling that is like the same dynamic with the 2020. I think there are more people fretting about the implications of that 1-20 thing than it actually having any impact.
Well, I agree with like everything that you said there with one caveat that stuff really drives his base and drives them to the polls. That's the big thing. Like the wall, some Republicans are going to take it on the chin, but his base, they're coming out. You know what I mean? The bigotry towards Elizabeth Warren and her ancestry and all that stuff, it drives his base, but it drives them to the polls also. They love this. Adam Seward from the Atlantic, he coined it best. The cruelty is the point. And so we just have to see if we can find a candidate on our side that can overcome the energy that Donald Trump still surprisingly gets from his base. They're coming out to the polls.
But of course they're going to come out to the polls, right? I mean,
but can we overcome it though?
I mean, the numbers that he had with the candidate who brings people out on against him, I think that we undoubtedly. I mean, you think about the numbers he had relative to Mitt Romney. I think they were even less. It's just that last time the Democratic candidate severely underperformed. Mm-hmm. And that was a big part of the problem. And so, I
mean, we can't go down. We can't have a candidate who underperforms and undermotivates us. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's part of the calculus, and I think that's part of the calculus of Elizabeth Warren. Like, I hate to put it like this, but running for president is like a high school popularity contest as much as anything else. And when I say she missed her moment, part of it is like, you know, I don't know if she has that juice, that energy to make America excited enough to make the left of America excited enough to get everyone to the polls. Now, again, I will, if she's a nominee, whoever, I don't care who the nominee is. Right. I'm going to sell them like this is. We're just having a conversation on your show, but when we get down to brass tacks, man, I'm going to knock on doors for whoever it is.
Right. I am fully in Martin O'Malley's corner right now.
Every step of the way.
Ben Dixon. Folks can check out the Benjamin Dixon show, and I guess we are a little bit more than a month away
from the official launch.
Northstar.com. All right.
Northstar.com. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me,
Thanks,
Sam.
Ben.
It's always a pleasure.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Ben Dixon, folks. Where did Michael go? Did Michael just leave?
He said he had to duck out earlier than expected today.
Yeah, that was even earlier than I expected. Why did he even come in? Just to put more crumbs on the floor? Guy doesn't clean up after himself. We're going to research the cookie that is sitting on the carpet there on the floor.
It's such torture for me when you throw shade on Michael, because I love throwing shade on Michael, but I will also never side with the boss against a coworker because I'm not a scab.
I know. That's very difficult. I know that's his line. That's been his line for a long time. But you should also know that he's also part of management, right? I mean, he's in here. He's bossing around. I understand.
Maybe he thinks he is.
You threw me under the bus for the Coke bottles yesterday.
He did.
And he didn't even realize he was doing it when he did it.
That's right. He's the boss, right? Like he's part of management. So you might want to rethink that take. He's posing. He's just posing as a worker, but he's more management than worker at this point.
I'll take that under advisement.
Going off on his wherever he's going. I mean, come on. Oh, he's working on material. That's not what he said. God. Oh, my God. All right, folks. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we will be talking to Matthew, Film Guy, and he will give us a film. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about Force Majeure, because Matthew had originally recommended it, and then I was a friend instructed me to watch it. And so we'll see. All right, quick break. Come back. Matthew, Film Guy.
It's just a bad movie where there's no crying. Handing the keys to me in this red line. Where the lock that you locked in the suite says there's no prying. When the breath that you breathe in the street screams there's no science. When you look how you look then to me, then I see some light and fall into silence. This is a life story, so there's no climax, no more new territory. So pull away the IMAX. In the slot that you sliced through the scene, there was no shyness. In the plot that you passed through your teeth, there was no pity, no fading. Filthy kids on a kid in the big city, and no cut to a costly parade that's for him.
We are back. Sam Cedar on the Majority Report. Ladies and gentlemen, from time to time, we have, originally we were, this segment of the program on Fridays for our new listeners and viewers was held down by a who I thought at the time was a film critic. And it turned out he was posing as a film critic. He was not a film critic. He was just a entertainment reporter. And he kept recommending films that were bad. And one day I was like, you do, like, these are bad films that you're recommending. You're not a great film critic. And he's like, I'm not a film critic. And that happened. That took like 4 years. I think we were doing it. And then I was like, well, why would I then? You're not going to be on anymore. I'm going to get someone who's a real film guy.
Well, you don't have to be a film critic to have good taste.
Film guy.
He's both.
Matthew, the film guy, is choosing your streams. Cassavetes on Netflix and other such themes. Maybe you'll watch one and learn a few things. Please recommend me a movie to stream. Matthew, please recommend me a movie to stream. Matthew, film guy.
And Matthew Film Guy is one of those people who comes on to recommend films. Hello, Matthew Film Guy.
Hello, Sam Cedar. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. Thank you for joining us. This is your first visit to the show in 2019. Do I have that correct?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Can we still say that this far in? But Happy New Year to you, Sam.
We're only 10 days away from the actual New Year, so I would say yes. We're still at the beginning of the year. You could maybe say happy beginning of the year.
Happy beginning of the year, Sam. You know, I'm talking to you from my mother's lanai in sunny Boca Raton, where time dilates very severely, so it's hard to keep track.
Very nice. So you're in Boca, huh? Did you go to...
That's right.
There's a Tequila Willie's there, if I remember correctly, in Boca, where you can get tequila shots out of a beholstered waitress. Now, this, of course... was the last time I was there was in 1987, I think it was. I drove down to Florida with a buddy of mine, and we stayed at his grandmother's place in Boynton Beach, I think.
There you go.
One of those like gated community place.
That's right.
And we went to Tequila Willie's and got some tequila shots, and then I think we took mushrooms and went to Disney World.
Hell yeah.
That's
happiest place on earth.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what I'm doing here. Just me, Mary, and the dogs, taking mushrooms and drinking tequila.
All right. Well, that's nice. And so have you guys gone to Tequila Willie's? Is that still there? Have you checked that out? Or?
You know what? I don't know if it's Tequila Willie's, but I passed a place that was sort of a themed tequila bar across from the Super Target, which we have frequented several times. And I have not yet gone in, but maybe on your recommendation, I will amend that policy.
I'm sorry, did you say the Super Target?
That's right. They don't just have Targets down here, Sam. They have Super Targets. So I can get a bath mat and turkey bacon all in the same
hell yeah.
place.
Well, that reminds me of the middle of the country, really hard.
Yep.
Have you been to a Super Target?
That's the main form of Target where I'm from.
Seriously?
You come from the land of the Super Target.
Yep.
God, I just had to go to the one at Atlantic Center Terminal the other day to get stuff for my new house, and that was quite enough Target for me.
That's a sub-Super Target. That's like
That's the sub-Target.
Jesus.
So wait a second. So is a Super Target just like Target, but like how much?
Massive. Just massive. It's got a supermarket. It's got everything made in China ever inside it under one roof. It's fantastic.
And hard to miss the Super Target, right?
Is
that their slogan?
Can I get the soundboard up, please?
Yep. There you go. There we go. This doesn't seem to be.
Yeah. The best part of the Super... There you go. Yeah, no, I mean, apart from Super Target, I'm sort of down here on an extended sabbatical. We took a long road trip down from New York. We drove, so we saw the country on the East Coast. And I'm just sort of here taking in movies, the beach, and other dog-friendly locales.
So how long are you taking this extended sabbatical? This is starting to sound enticing and alluring to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, come on down, Sam. We got a couch.
Well, no, I wouldn't do it with you.
All right.
That's not what I'm
no
talking
pressure,
about.
No
I'm
pressure.
Just saying the idea.
There's plenty of other lanais and other gated
one,
communities with other Jewish grandmas here.
No, I don't doubt it. But I'm just curious as to how long are you going to be on this sabbatical for?
You know what? Since we drove, it's a little open-ended. I can be doing some work down here. I'm actually working on Ted Alexandro's new podcast, A Little Bit Me, which you can find on iTunes and Stitcher and all those other places. So I'm kind of, have computer will travel. So it could be a couple more weeks. It could be another month. Life's my oyster, Sam.
That is, I got to say, I'm a little jealous. I mean, the idea of getting out of the cold for a month and a half is pretty sweet. Now, what happens to your learning annex class?
Actually, that is one of the hard outs that I have. So that resumes in the middle of February. So that will probably be the one thing that does bring me back. But you know what? The ladies there love me so much. I refer you to the gift cards that I received, that I could probably skip even one of those classes and still not really, damage my long-term prospects there.
But wait a second. If you skip, do you send in a sub?
Oh, no. They wouldn't take a sub. They just come back the next week and they get like a minor refund.
Wow.
But if anyone's listening from my class, I still plan to be there. I think it's February 13th. But, keep your eye on your email.
Do you have members of that class who listen to this program?
I have certainly mentioned it before, but I don't know how many of them, the Venn diagram of the people who show up and the people who can listen to a podcast online, it may not exactly overlap very much. So I can't say for sure.
Okay. That sounds like you made some modicum of effort to get people to listen. That's fine.
Yeah, I would basically have to show up at each of their houses and show them how to download iTunes and so on, and that's just, I don't get paid quite enough for that. But I have mentioned it, and I think a few people have told me that they have heard of it, at least, like they heard of you. Maybe.
Well, yeah, that's not really what I'm looking for, but that's nice.
No, I certainly stump for the show every chance I get. You know that, Sam.
Yeah, okay. I just thought that we were bringing in some of those folks, but that's okay. All right. Well, we're not. Now, Matthew.
I'll tell you what, Sam. I'll put out a survey next class, and we'll see. We'll get the real numbers for you.
Okay, good. Now, let's get to this film thing, because there's a little bit of a controversy here. That now that I'm checking my phone, I was quite convinced that you recommended to me on this program Force Majeure. I don't know when it came out. I assume
the legal concept?
Not the legal concept. The movie, Force Majeure. And
I never heard of it.
Somebody recommended it. Was it Isabel? I don't know.
It could have been one of your other myriad film guys. I don't know. But was it good?
Yeah, it was great. Do you want me to tell you a little bit about it? I mean, I'm very surprised that you don't even know. Put on your film guy hat and go to town. I'm very surprised that you don't know what this movie is. I don't know who recommended it to me, but Force Majeure, of course, the concept itself is sort of is a legal term, and that is an unforeseeable, very often natural event or circumstance that keeps someone from being able to fulfill a contract, right? So if there's, you got a hotel reservation and, the hotel gets swept away in a flood and there's no hotel, it's force majeure. I'm sorry, we can't give you the room, that type of thing. That may not be the greatest of examples, but that's it. So the movie Force Majeure, though, was released in 2014. I'm looking at this. I'm surprised you didn't see this because it got the Gold Buggage Award for Best Picture, which I don't know. It's a foreign film. I think it's Swedish. Is it? It's a Swedish film by Ruben Östlund. And I think they probably dubbed it in English, but or maybe there's a little bit of English. Or maybe there's a little bit of English that they actually speak. And I didn't recognize any of the people in it except for the guy who plays the Christoph Hij, the guy who plays the red-headed guy.
What's that again?
From the Christoph Hij or something. Guy who played the redhead in Game of Thrones. It's. Do you want me to tell? Well, how much? I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do it with it.
It's your show, Sam. You can use the time as you see fit.
I'm not really. This is not a spoiler, really, because it's. I mean, it's.
We don't want any repeats of James Bond Gate.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a major spoiler. But it's about a relationship and something happens, and.
Oh, I love movies where something happens. I also love movies where something doesn't.
Well, that's right. And something happens that causes the wife to see her husband in a new light. And it's a little bit problematic. And it's sort of, it's a bit of a satire.
I'm starting to see your attraction to this movie.
What? Why is that?
Oh, maybe not. Never mind.
No. It doesn't. It doesn't have any bearing on my former marriage. I don't think. No.
Okay.
No, but it's just a revealing moment, and it's pretty funny the way, and it's about gender roles and about what we expect about people and what. It's something I thought that it sounds like your kind of movie, and I can't believe you didn't see it.
Well, I will certainly rectify that oversight right away. I mean, I'm down here with about 500 other movies that I've been trying to see without having the real time. I'm trying to see like the 2-hour plus, 3-hour plus movies. But I will throw that into the rotation, I promise you.
What?
It seems the student has become the film guy.
That's right.
That's right, Sam. You've turned the tables. I've learned you well.
What films have you brought down there with you? Do you bring down like Blu-rays? Do you bring down your own Blu-ray player when you're driving down to Boca?
No, I buy movies. I download movies. I'm a member of some of these invite-only torrent sites, so I trade movies with other cinephiles and things like that. So I've just amassed a hard drive full of digital copies of movies that just need to be seen eventually.
And how do you watch those? You watch those on your computer? Do you have a means in which
you get an HDMI cord that plugs right into your computer. We have Mary's laptop. It goes right into the computer. I got a nice Bose sound bar that I got my mother to buy for her 60-inch flat screen here. So we've got somewhat of a fairly good audio setup going. And you just hit VLC player. Shout out to VLC player. Thank you, God, for VLC player. And you just go to town on it, Sam.
Oh, and then you play it on the TV. Is that it?
That's right, on the TV, yep. Big screen TV, bucket of popcorn sometimes.
All right.
Back.
So, Matthew, for a moment, we're all going to pretend that we're in our mother's, or maybe just your mother's living room in Boca, and we have the opportunity to sit back and watch a movie because, hey, we're in Florida. Why wouldn't you want to stay inside?
Exactly, Sam. I'm glad you catch my meaning.
God forbid you would go out in the dead of winter and want to get some sun and maybe go swimming or something.
It's nice to know that it's out there. It's just nice to know that it's out there. No, that's not true. We've been outside a little bit. There's so many dog-friendly places here. There's dog parks. There's dog beaches. So we've seen the outside. Believe me, that's Mary's main.
What's the temperature?
That we do get some
What's
vitamin
the temperature
D.
out there?
Actually, it's like a really nice about 74 right now where I'm sitting. I'm in shade. It's nice and cool. So it's not super hot, but it's quite comfortable.
I want to kill you right now.
You just can't think about these things if you're going to live in New York.
I honestly...
You really want to know.
I shouldn't have asked that question. I mean, I honestly right now I want to end your life.
It took me over 20 years of living in New York to really realize I don't have to tough it out. I don't have to wake up either burning hot because of the steam heat or freezing cold because I've had to go somewhere. And really, I owe it to Mary. I have to give her the credit for getting me out of my sedentary lifestyle and saying we could actually take advantage of the fact that your mother lives in Florida. And we have.
Son of a gun. I'm mad now. All right. Well, so what dumb movie do you want to recommend Matthew, as you sit there living life by the pool.
Well,
do you day drink when you're there?
Go...
Do you day drink? Because I can't. That's all I'm thinking about now. Is like going down, sitting by the pool, and day drinking. That's what I want to do.
I just want to be able to ride my bike to work, so it doesn't take me an hour to get here on a bus.
It would be nice. Day drink, ride around a gated community in Boca.
Maybe get a little cup holder for my bike.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd take my life in my hands riding a bike around the streets of Boca. It's like all 6-lane highways here, so that's a little scary proposition. But
now
is
she in like one of those communities, or does she have like just like a condo, like an apartment type of situation?
One of those communities. I mean, they're semi-attached, just like 2 and 3 kind of fit together. But it's one of those little, Boca del Boca type Seinfeld places. Yeah.
All right, but can't you ride your bike around there? Like, is it?
Yes, that's what I mean. You could ride your bike around here, but you wouldn't actually go anywhere.
Right. No, you wouldn't want to go anywhere else. Right. Now, is there a golf course associated with that, or is that just?
I don't think this one. I don't think this one does. But there's like every third one has a golf course.
Right.
So we're right across the street from a giant mall that has like a Tesla store and an Apple store and
of course
Cartier inside it. So it's like that's what you're kind of dealing with here.
Oh okay, I'm just feel like you're like living in that episode of Broad City where they go visit someone's grandma in Boca and they're like, oh my God, this is so great. We're totally going to move here. And then they find out that all the old Jewish people in this Florida complex are like racist and right wing.
Benjamin wrote about this in his book. And he didn't credit me as the other person, but we got,
I know.
We pitched a show to Conan O'Brien's production company of 2 guys who go down and live. I think it was called early retirement, and they would go down to a retirement place and basically move in. They'd figure out a way of doing that, move in with their grandparents or something like that.
Broad City copied you.
Oh yeah, this is years later. The Broad City, of course, everybody copied us. And what we did. We went down there and we visited his father-in-law at the time. Not his father-in-law, his brother-in-law's father, and who was like a self-styled comedian and was like sort of like would do productions in the community, and so. We ended up, John convinced me to do this. You can read the book to find out exactly how it happened, even though he doesn't mention my name. He just says my writing partner or whatever. John convinced me to give up part of the money that we were making to write the script to this guy to write the script for us. And he was a 70-year-old man who wrote a sitcom that read like a 70-year-old man was writing a sitcom at that time, and we handed it in as a joke. It was all just a joke. And the response from the executives was like, we feel like you're, it's good, but we feel like you're writing something that you think we would think is funny, and we want you to write something that you think is funny. And we're like, what? We think this is great. And then eventually we just handed in our script, and they were just like, why did you do that? And we're like, well, we thought it was funny.
And don't forget to include the disbursement of the money that you were given to this guy, basically, right?
Oh yeah, we gave him about 10% of what our contract was. We paid him like I don't know, like $5,000-$6,000 or something.
Sounds like it was worth it.
It was a funny story. Benjamin monetized it, I guess, by writing it in his damn book. Anyways, so what do you recommend as a movie, Matthew Film Guy?
Well, I've got a couple here because I've been seeing them at a kind of a fast clip here.
Okay.
And I've been going back through some of the classics of the early 70s, which was, as everybody knows, a kind of heyday for Hollywood filmmaking. You could have sort of major movie stars that
probably
still were in movies that were... What's that?
I've probably seen those.
Well, let's see. Because then I've got the big hitter to follow it up with. But a few that I watched just to sort of catch up on some was Scarecrow with Al Pacino and Gene Hackman. Do you know that one?
No.
Okay, great. Glad to hear it.
Scarecrow.
It's It's directed by Jerry Schatzberg, who did Panic in Needle Park. This was his follow-up with Al Pacino. It's quite the sort of downbeat, but really kind of intense 70s sort of milieu about two sort of down-on-the-luck guys who strike up an odd friendship and sort of have these dreams. It's a little bit of a Midnight Cowboy.
I was just going to say, sounds Midnight Cowboyish.
Yeah. It probably got green-lighted due to the success of Midnight Cowboy a few years earlier.
Interesting.
Then I watched a sort of a neo-noir, but this one takes place in the great city of Boston, very seedy underbelly of Boston in the early 70s, The Friends of Eddie Coyle. You know this one?
No, I don't.
Yeah, these are great. These are little, like, lesser-known, sort of minor-key 70s movies. This is directed by Peter Yates, and it's got the great Robert Mitchum, Peter Boyle, Alex Rocco, those kind of guys. And it's just sort of like a low-key, I want to say gangster movie, just like criminals movie. And it's very sort of ambient storytelling, not a lot of plot, but such great shitty Boston of the early 70s milieu. So you've got to see that one.
During the heyday of the indie world, there was a movie like that about Boston with like 2 or 3 guys who were like petty criminals. I can't remember what the name of that movie was.
Are you thinking of Palookaville?
Maybe.
Okay.
All right. What else you got?
And now here's the one that I think everyone should go out and see just because of its sort of relevance to our current state of political affairs. I don't always do that with my reviews, but in this one I thought it was pretty relevant. Actually, Mary and I watched the documentary. This is not the one, but we watched the great documentary I Am Not Your Negro about James Baldwin, which if everybody hasn't seen that won a lot of awards a couple years ago. It's an incredible documentary on him. And that sort of sent us down a YouTube rabbit hole watching some of these panels that he was on in the early and mid-'60s. And that inspired me to see a little-known movie directed by none other than Roger Corman, who you wouldn't expect a movie like this from. He made his name, as you know, making low-budget schlock horror movies. Right. Some of them actually very interesting. He gave a career start to so many of the people that went on to make bigger movies like Martin Scorsese and Ron Howard and Peter Fonda and Jack Nicholson and James Cameron and just tons of people over the years. But he directed a movie starring none other than Captain Kirk himself, William Shatner, called The Intruder. Have you heard of this movie, Sam?
No, I have not.
Okay, it's really not released, but it is on YouTube, and it basically is about a grifter comes down from, I guess he says he's from Hollywood, he's from L.A., and he comes down to a southern town who is struggling in the wake of integration, and they're sort of begrudgingly accepting the fact that their children have to go to school with black people, and he stirs up trouble to basically aggrandize himself and becomes this kind of almost cult leader of these southern racists. And I don't have to draw the parallels for you for our current president, but I will. It's like Trump. Our president is Trump, and he's like Trump.
Okay, fair enough. That makes it easier to follow where you're going with that.
Just in case. And it's William Shatner being his purest Shatneristness, the best Shatner you could ever Shatner. And he's this kind of, literally a race hustler, race pimp. What does O'Reilly call these people? He's really that. And it is actually sort of nuanced and actually sophisticated. You could call it kind of a race-exploitation movie because he did a lot of these kind of exploitation movies about the issue of the day, whether it was bikers or teenage, runaways and this kind of thing. But it's actually a really interesting look. It made in 1962 a look at what the actual issues were, with the Civil Rights Act and with integration. And so I feel like everything that we talk about, or you guys talk about on this show, comes back to this kind of forced integration. Matt, you did that great coverage of Democracy in Chains, and it feels like the epicenter is the forcing kids to go to school with different races. And this is basically all centered around that in a really kind of interesting way. It also features a Jewish nymphomaniac. It also features kind of liberal use of the N-word, so you can enjoy that if you're so inclined. But it's just really a snapshot of it's not just a documentary, but it's a snapshot of what I think Roger Corman and early 60s Hollywood thought would be sort of a moving issue for people to come to the theater to see. And for some reason, maybe because it's so sensitive and so kind of, exploitative in some way, it hadn't gotten a commercial release, but it is on YouTube and it sometimes plays on cable, so you can find it there.
Well, I will check out. I've put all of them on. I now have a to watch list on my phone. So Friends of Eddie Coyle, Scarecrow, The Intruder, I Am Not Your Negro. All of those are on my list to watch. And Matthew, let me be the first and probably the only person to say, I'm sorry, we're going to miss you on Sunday at the live show.
Sam, I appreciate that. I'm really sorry. I'm going to miss that too. I would have loved to have been able to capture it again for posterity, but it is not to be. But next year, when you do the next one, I'm sure I will be there.
All right. Well, Matthew Film Guy, thank you so much, buddy. Talk to you soon.
My pleasure, Sam. Take care. Bye-bye.
Now, we're going to try and either stream some backstage stuff on YouTube, I think, and maybe even on our Instagram, which we're setting up. Have we set that up yet?
It is set up, actually.
The Majority Report?
At Majority FM.
At Majority FM is our Instagram account. There you go. Oh, yeah, look at that. Wow.
Updating in real time.
Wow. I love it.
Got about 35 follows or something.
All right. We're going to put a link to our... Geez, you did a good job with that, Matt. We're gonna build that out a little bit.
We might do more than just this picture, so
yeah,
stay
we
tuned.
may do more than one picture, but we'll try and do some videos on there. Wow, look at that! That's yeah. Now, maybe what we can also do is put one of these on there. We now have our collector's item poster, which is going to be available for sale at the show, and there it is. What do you think about that?
Looks good.
Can people see that? Is that showing up properly?
Put that on the gram.
Left is best. The Bell House show. Put that up there. That is that's just a little a one-off poster. Maybe we'll use that theme in the future.
Is it a limited edition poster?
I think it is. Well, it necessarily is limited insofar as that it's got the date of the show on there. So it's a limited edition. We will see. And we'll put that on Instagram, too. We're going to put all sorts of crazy stuff on there.
We're blowing up the grid.
We got the zero-sum game memes we're going to put on Instagram, and somebody did a vest, no vest. Did you see that? Did you see that? I don't know where somebody's got to tweet that at me again because I think I lost it. But that's up there. So we've got all of those things, wonderful things happening around here. Very exciting. Folks, just want to remind you that it is your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member by going to jointhemajority.report.com. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code MAJORITY, get 10% off. Check out the Michael Brooks show. It's on Michael Brooks' YouTube page. Nomi Konst was on this week. And you can go check out majority.fm for a way to contribute. I think there's one more day maybe where you can send qualifying, you can donate money that will qualify for matching funds in her public advocate race. She had a fundraiser in New York City last night and was attended by myself. I saw Michael there too. He was the host of festivities. So what do you call that? Master of Ceremonies?
The impresario.
The impresario. And Jamie, the Intifada. What's happening on the Intifada?
Yeah, so this week on the Antifada.
Antifada. Did I call it the Intifada?
Antifada. That's it's all acceptable.
It's close enough.
We have our friend Sophie Weiner of Splinter News to talk about Australia. And if you were dissatisfied with what Barry Weiss had to say about Australia, I strongly encourage you to listen to this instead, because I'd say it's a slightly better, more clear-eyed outline of the political issues at play in that crazy country and the different kinds of fascists that they have down there and the different kinds of anti-fascists that they have down there. So I found it to be a pretty interesting conversation. We also joke around a little bit about the idea of tankies for Trump because we think that's funny.
Once the nation no longer needs Barry Weiss to write about, the different parts of the world in the paper of record, I think she should have a travel show. Literary Hangover.
God. Wild on, Barry Weiss.
Oh, gosh. Literary Hangover. Coming up, we're going to record it next week. The House of the Seven Gables by Nathaniel Hawthorne, which is a very weird book about sort of inheritance and property and decadent families. So I think there's no sort of modern relevance for it. But Literary Hangover, check it out.
All right, folks, going to take a quick break. Headed to the fun half. 646-257-3920 is the number.